No one is above the law. It's not just a slogan. It's an American principle that's supposed to guide our justice system. A principle that's pursued accountability for everyone from billionaires to Hollywood hotshots to members of Congress to cabinet secretaries to governors to mayors, but never for an American president, current or former. Well, that all changed on Thursday when a Manhattan grand jury took the historic step of indicting former President Donald Trump after a lengthy investigation led by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. That case centers around an alleged hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels during Trump's 2016 campaign. Two sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News to expect about 30 charges related to document fraud. Here's what Trump's attorney, Joe Tacopina, told my Today Show colleagues about the former president's response.
He decided we have to fight now, and he got into a typical Donald Trump posture where he's ready to be combative on something that he believes is an injustice.
And combative he was. In a subsequent meltdown on that little blog of his, Trump badgered and berated everyone from prosecutors to New Yorkers to the very judge overseeing his case. Look, y'all, we have not seen the indictment. We do not know yet the specific charges. We do not know the evidence that guided those charges. But we do know that the case was strong enough to convince the majority of a grand jury panel to take an unprecedented step. And despite all of these unknown factors, many Republicans once again leapt to defend the former president, echoing his social media rants.
They will do anything, use any kind of power to try and hold on to their own privileges, their own positions, and we're seeing that tonight. This is just unprecedented in American history.
Give the president some money to fight this. This is going to destroy America.
It's a political prosecution by a Manhattan DA who literally campaigned for office on a pledge to indict the former president.
District Attorney Alvin Bragg was never out to get the former president, as so many of Trump's defenders would have you believe. When Bragg took office, he determined that a 3-year probe into Trump's business dealings didn't have hard enough evidence to pursue an indictment against him. This prompted outrage from Trump's critics and even led prosecutors of DA Bragg's own office to resign, with one calling it a, quote, grave failure of justice. Trump's incessant cries of witch hunt, I think they represent exactly the kind of disinformation that we have come to expect from the former president and those determined to stand by him. People, this indictment is not Trump's downfall. In fact, this is when Donald Trump's rhetoric is at its most dangerous, because we've seen this before. We've seen that when checks and balances, when the rule of law and even our own democracy itself stands in his way, that he threatens chaos and lawlessness, or as he warned last week, quote, potential death and destruction. This nation knows from experience that many of his supporters take those words as marching orders. We say no one is above the law, but through 2 impeachments and insurrection, irrevocable harm, irreparable harm to our democracy, and even more, even as his own subordinates get prison time, Donald Trump himself has skirted accountability at every turn, all with the stamp of approval from the Republican Party apparatus. The indictment of a former president is historic, but our nation living up to the principle that no one, not even a former president, not even Donald Trump, is above the law? Now that would truly be uncharted territory. Joining me now is former Brooklyn prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst Charles Coleman, former Democratic Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida, and editor-at-large for The Bulwark and MSNBC contributor Charlie Sykes. Welcome to you all. Congresswoman, I'm going to start with you. You know, you were an impeachment manager in the former president's first impeachment, only to watch the Republican-dominated Senate at the time acquit him. What was your reaction to the news of this indictment?
Well, Simone, it's good to be with you and your other guests. And I don't think you can say it enough that my former Republican colleagues have not even seen the charges yet, but they have taken to the airways, the microphones, and basically ran to defend the president. I really think that's shameful. But let me say this. I enforced the laws for 27 years. I helped to write the laws 6 years in Congress. And what I know, Simone, from a lot of experience is that no one is above the law. I remember during the impeachment trial, the first one, at least when we were trying to make a decision whether we were going to move forward with impeachment. And I remember saying in one of our Democratic caucus meetings that, look, This president is not going to allow us to not impeach him because he is an habitual offender. He will not stop. And we've seen the history of violations of law, violations of rules, inappropriate behavior, does not have a great relationship with the truth. And now here we are. So, Simone, with all of the challenges that our justice system has, I really do believe, not just today, not just on Friday, but for a long time, that nobody is above the law.
You know, Donald Trump has been attacking the New York County Supreme Court judge in his case, Judge Juan Merchan. And the judge is expected, again, he's going to preside over this arraignment on Tuesday. And according to a court administration official, you've got Donald Trump that said this on social media, understanding all of that the judge, quote, hates him and accused the judge of mistreating the former president's organization, CFO Alan Weisselberg, when he presided over that case. Charles, you know, you're a former prosecutor, so if a freshly indicted defendant in one of your cases was bad-mouthing the judge to millions of folks on social media, what would your reaction be?
Well, as a former prosecutor, I would let it go. I'm gonna let it go ahead and let him dig as deep a hole as he can, because the only thing that's going to ultimately result here, Simone, is he's going to put himself in a position where that judge has ample grounds to issue a gag order. Now, the contours of that gag order would remain to be seen in terms of what he would and would not be able to talk about and where he would and would not be able to post. But he is giving this judge ample grounds to get him in that position. Typically, that's not something you see judges do unprompted. Usually a prosecutor will ask for a gag order. But in a case like this, Alvin Bragg doesn't have to do anything because Donald Trump continues to run his mouth. And so if he continues to do that, he is going to open the door for the judge to actually put a gag order on him where he won't be saying anything more.
Charlie, hearing both of those two things, what we've heard from Charles and the former Congresswoman, you have actually warned that our democracy and the legal system are about to face a huge stress test with this prosecution. What do you think the biggest threats are that we should be preparing for?
Well, I mean, first of all, no one should be above the law, but Donald Trump has lived for 50 years as someone who is above the law. We do have a two-tiered, three-tiered system of justice, and Donald Trump has exploited that for years and intends to continue to exploit it. The rules have changed here. Here is somebody who has attacked the courts, has attacked prosecutors, has insulted judges, in the past freely. But next week, everything changes because this will be the first time that he's insulting a judge that is actually presiding over his own criminal trial. He will be a criminal defendant. So one of the real stress tests is that Donald Trump is going to use his clout, his celebrity, his political power to try to discredit the entire criminal justice system. And right now, the Republican Party is, on one level, falling in line behind Donald Trump, but on a larger level, what they're also doing is, by not waiting to hear what's actually in the indictment, they're essentially saying that Donald Trump should continue to be above the law, that any attempt to hold him legally accountable is somehow illegitimate. If one of the two major political parties in this country has internalized this idea that their leader should be untouchable, that a president and a former president can never be charged with anything, then we are in really fraught constitutional situation here. And I do think that we're seeing this with the threats of violence, the attempts to intimidate, and the attempt to essentially saying that Donald Trump is somebody who ought to continue to be untouchable, and is also running for president with the explicit promise that he is going to fire prosecutors, he's going to gut the FBI.
This is not something.
Gut the deep state.
This is not something. Is not normal, and this is not, just regular political jargon, if you will. I think this is actually quite serious. Charles, can you walk us through what is actually going to happen when Donald Trump shows up at the courthouse in Manhattan to surrender on Tuesday? Because I think folks watching should know, will there be any special considerations for him? Walk us through what we're going to see.
Well, we're unlikely to see the usual perp walk that we would with many defendants, and that in and of itself is not typically abnormal for someone of his stature and his status. He may or may not be handcuffed. It would not entirely surprise me not to see him handcuffed. He will be fingerprinted. He will get a mugshot. He will be issued what is called a NYSID number, which is a New York State inmate ID number. He will be given all of those things, and then he will appear in court. And in court, the indictment will be read in open court for everyone after it is unsealed, after it has been filed by Alvin Bragg and the DA at the DA's office. At that point, former President Trump will be citizen Trump, and he will be treated like a citizen throughout the process of this prosecution. That may include several legal maneuvers from his defense team, as it should. He is entitled to due process as anyone else would be. And so I expect that his attorneys are going to do everything that they can to try to move this thing around and make the state do their job. It is the burden of the state to prove Donald Trump's guilt, not Donald Trump's burden to prove his innocence. And that's something that has to be understood and maintained throughout this discussion, regardless of our political feelings or other affiliations.
I think it's very important. Now, Charles, I will note that we are actually hearing no mugshot as of now for the former president, but again, that could change.